Came here in 1986 to run it for myself in October. I signed the papers and I was owner of the Red Barn Incorporated. People come in here for the experience, more so than I think anything else. And they love the fact that somebody's actually taking the time to listen. Find that balance between doing what you love that isn't really work, that might pay the bills, and more importantly, can resonate with people and actually to some extent help people. That's pretty rewarding. Without my customers, I would be doing what I don't love, guaranteed.
A little bit.
Greetings, voters. Before we begin, I want to make sure that all of the non-residents are sitting in the rear section. If you are a resident and you would like to vote this evening, please sit in the voting section to the front after you have checked in with the voter registrar. If you'd like to make a comment on one of the articles we are taking on, please raise your hand or stand up so the moderator will call on you to speak. Because this meeting is broadcast on CATV, you will be asked to speak into the microphone both here on the corner when addressing the moderator and state your name, street, or organization if applicable. Please place all phones on silent, and cell phones that are going to be used near the microphones you actually turn off because it creates interference with our vote. At this time, I'd like to invite everybody to please join me in the Pledge of
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we begin the business portion of our meeting, there will be presentations of recognition. At this time, I'd like to introduce Town Council Chairman Michael Taylor, Vice Chair and Representative John Totti, and Senator Scott Searle. They'll be presenting the dedication as well as the Spirit of America Award. Gentlemen.
Okay, first I would like to take and talk about the dedication to the town of Fairfield. Arthur Donald Julia, 1927 to 2017, was a lifelong resident of Faifield and led a larger-than-life existence. He was a graduate from Lawrence High School, went on to become an outstanding athlete, pilot, musician, traveler, and innovative businessman, translated many careers until he created his own niche in the antique and auctioneering industry. He's married to his high school sweetheart, Lila Wood, and they raised a family of 7 children on their farm in Fairfield, all instilled to be entrepreneurs. He based his antique and auctioneering business in Fairfield with his son James D. Julia, taking over the auction business in 1974. Known as the go-to auctioneer in Central Maine, he was endeared to his bidders for his charismatic charm and integrity. Cementing his legacy at 89, Arthur Julia was the oldest practicing country auctioneer in New England, and likely one of the oldest in North America. He was inducted into the Maine Auctioneer Hall of Fame in 2006. In addition to promoting local, regional, and nationwide business based out of Fairfield, Arthur D. Julia supported local sports programs and furthering education and co-founded educational scholarship programs with his wife, preserver of history. In 2013, Arthur was in possession of the original signage of the Fairfield's historical Gerald Hotel. He made this sign available, which allowed this artifact to return to the Gerald during KB Cap's historical preservation renovation project. Appreciation for this thoughtful approach forward. Arthur was politically active and civic-minded, serving on the Fairfield Town Council, Fairfield boards and committees, and the local school board over the years. The The town of Fairfield is grateful to have known this Fairfield son and appreciates his service, investment in local business, and many contributions to the greater community. It is an honor to dedicate the 2018 Town Report to Arthur D. Julia.
Wonderful man. Good evening. I'm Senator Scott Seaway, who represents this area of Fairfield. A lot of buildings below Benton, Albion, Clinton, and Unity Township, and we always like to recognize people that do outstanding things, and that's what I'd like to do today. And this is the 2018 Spirit of America Award. And I'd like to just tell you a little bit about this gentleman. Since first instituted back in 1967, Charles Matthews has volunteered and contributed diligently serving the town of Fairfield. As far as for the planning board, he started in '72, but in '67 he started with the Boy Scouts of America. And that's 51 years he dedicated his time to Boy Scouts. Can you imagine? 51 years. That's amazing. That's with the Pine Tree Council to include commissioner, district member at large, training committee chair, district committee member, district chairman. Training certifications included youth protection, unit commissioner, doctor of commissioner of science, Cub master, Cub Scout den leader, Tiger den leader, Whiplos leader, new leader essentials, troop committee challenge, safe swim defense, weather hazards, safety afloat, trek safely, trainers, edge, and this is scouting unit commissioner, fast start. I mean, that's a lot in 50 years, and we have a sentiment from the Senate and her representative, and I will, we also have a plaque here to give, but from the state of Maine, it says, be it known to all that we, the members of the Senate and the House of Representatives, join in recognizing Charles E. Matthews of Fairfield, who has received a Spirit of America Foundation Award. The Spirit of America Foundation was established to encourage and promote volunteerism, and the foundation presents awards to honor local individuals, organizations, or projects in appreciation for community service. We send our congratulations to Mr. Matthews on his receiving this award, and be it ordered that this official expression of sentiment be sent forthwith on behalf of the 128th Legislature and the people of the state of Maine.
Signed, President of the Senate, Michael Thibodeau. Secretary of the Senate, Heather Priest. Speaker of the House, Sarah Gideon. Clerk of the House, Robert Hunt. As well as Representative John Pichatti and myself. Congratulations and thank you.
Achievement for Mr. Matthews from the town of Fairfield, the resolution providing that Charles Matthews as recipient of the Spirit of America Reward.
Say a few words.
First, I want to thank the town council and Christine, our town clerk, for this honor. When I started 46 years ago on the planning board, and 52 years ago as scoutmaster, I had no intention of serving that many years. What made it possible was the people, and I liked what I was doing. I've worked with many good people over the years and made many friends in Fairfield and throughout the state. If you work together with a group for the good of the people, instead of doing it for yourself, you get the satisfaction you help them in some small way. I encourage you to all look around tonight at those present. You'll find many that are deserving of this award. And I urge you to give their names to Christine for future presentations. It's also an honor to be recognized in the town report that is dedicated to Arthur Jr., who I knew for 50 years as a friend and was my first insurance agent. Thank all of you for your volunteering, your time, and your talents for making a difference in the lives of others. Thank you.
The Fairfield Boston Post King recipient continues to be Vivian Field, who is 98 and 99 in September. So at this time, I call the meeting to order. Please turn to page 60 of the annual town report. We will now ask to vote on Article 1 to choose a moderator. Do I have a motion to nominate a moderator?
Nominate Philip Curtis.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Yeah, second.
Are there any other nominations? Do we have a motion to cease nominations?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of Philip Curtis, please signify by raising your hand. Opposed? Mr. Moderator, would you please come and be sworn in? Philip Curtis, you swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and this state as long as you continue a citizen thereof, and that you will faithfully discharge to the best of your abilities duties incumbent on you as moderator according to the Constitution and laws of this state, so help you God.
I will.
Would you sign here? And I hereby turn the meeting and the gavel over to you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Welcome.
Good evening. Well, welcome to the 2018 annual town meeting for the town of Fairfield. This is your opportunity as citizens of the town of Fairfield to do your part in approving or not approving the proposed articles and budget for the town of Fairfield. Just a couple of housekeeping rules that I always like to
clarify up front. One of the actions that has happened in the past in many town meetings, not just here, but after doing a little research on it a year ago, I found that it was not proper. So I'm not going to allow a motion to take a block of articles all in one, simply because each of the articles have the opportunity to be discussed, questions, comments to, or even amended if you want to amend them. So it may take a couple minutes more to get through town meeting, but it makes it much clearer. The ultimate goal is to make a clear, concise, and definite decision, and therefore we can deal with each article as they come. Secondly, I'll read the article to you. Once I complete reading it, I will say, well, what is your pleasure? And somebody needs to make a motion to accept article, whatever it may be, as printed, not necessarily as read, because I've been known to make a mistake from once in a while. I'm from Madison, so you have to cut me a little slack. I can't read real well. So as printed, and that clearly brings that article onto the floor. And once that motion is made and seconded, then the article can have action taken to it. Okay? Any negative article, which means you're going to have to vote yes to me, no, and no to me yes, I'll rule that out of order, and we'll proceed with the meeting. So, in order to move on, we need to take action on Article 2, which reads, to see the town will allow non-residents who have information pertaining to Article 2 through Article 37 to speak. What is your pleasure?
So moved as printed.
Is there a second? Second. Motion has been made and seconded to accept Article 2 as printed. All in favor, please signify. Those opposed, motion carries. I'd like to introduce Town Manager to her. She's going to give you an overview of the articles and clarify any points that she needs to clarify. So, Madam Town Manager.
Clarify. If you notice here for the second year, we included the spreadsheets that go with all the articles that are within the town meeting warrant. They start on page 70. There is a general budget total overview page that is on page 70. Towards almost the very bottom of the page, you're going to see a decrease from 2017 to 2018. If you follow that across, it says it's 106,417.24 minus. It's actually wrong. It should be the number all the way over to the left just above it, which it should be down 111,417.24. There was a mistake in the formula when it captured it. So the budget's not down 4.4%, it's down 4.6%. So we do have to tell you it's one of the best mistakes I've ever had to tell anyone, especially for a town meeting in this day and age. We do have some things that are going on within our budgets. Even though the budget total is down, there are some increases in various locations. One of them being wages, as always. Pretty much the budget number for this year was a 2.5% increase for staff. That basically put that's about the average for most of our union contracts. There were increases in insurance this year, which are out of our control. There was a 6% increase in health insurance, a 3% increase in vision, 3% increase in dental, and then a 5% increase in vision. And it's been a number of years since we've seen a vision and dental increase. There also were some other pieces that have changed throughout. The one thing is, of course, utilities. We all know as electric bills go up, heating costs, fuel costs, we suffer the same exact affliction. Kennebec Water District this year with an additional 5% increase. That does hit the town rather significantly because of hydrants, and you'll see that large increase when we get to the protection budget, and you'll see how that goes through. That budget just includes hydrants and streetlights. We are happy to report, though, that we should hopefully see a decrease in next year for streetlights. One, we're looking on the municipal possibility of owning our own streetlights, which would diminish the cost, but we have done our own inventory and have found that there are a number of streetlights that we're being charged for that were, for one reason or another, taken down by CMP. So by keeping track of those sorts of things, we're helping to decrease your budget. There really isn't a whole lot else going on in the budget except for the two major things. The largest decrease that we have is because of solid waste. You'll notice, and anyone who actually takes their own trash knows that we don't go to pine tree waste anymore in Waterville. We now go to the waste management landfill in Norristown. That change happened because our contract with Kirk Energy expired. We're no longer paying the transportation costs that it takes to get the trash to Kirk, but we're also no longer seeing the revenue stream that came in. So while it cut about $400,000 from our budget, it also cut about $300,000 from the revenue side. Then also, there was a big change when it comes to debt service. The property that's located at 50 Escalade Drive was sold this past year. The town held a bond on that property, so you'll notice a decrease in the town's debt project. And then we also held a mortgage on that property. And when the mortgage was paid, it was roughly $251,000 more than what the bond was owed. And you'll see where those funds were used in Article 38 for the breakdown, was trying to put that money towards capital reserves to get our capital reserve budgets where they need to be. Like most municipalities, capital reserve budgets have been a place where saving for a rainy day was never deemed a necessity, and we've oftentimes have cut back on what we're putting away for our equipment. And we are in desperate need of ensuring that we can pay for this equipment as things happen. This year we had a surprise plow truck that blew up. We had a couple of fire trucks that were no longer past inspection, and it was difficult to find the funds to replace those. These were pieces of equipment that were either scheduled very quick, in this current year to be replaced, and we had to buy them early, or pieces of equipment that were not scheduled anytime soon, but did not necessarily have the funds. So these are pieces that we're trying to correct and trying to get ahead of. It seems like it's easy to take $50,000 away because no, we're not buying a truck this year, but when it's $250,000 to $300,000 for a truck, $50,000 every year goes a long way towards making it so that it's more manageable and within the budget. So with no further ado, I'm going to turn it back over to the moderator. We'll answer any questions that you have as we go through. Please remember that the spreadsheets that are with these article questions we do not line item appropriate. These are just simply here as guidelines and give you the information as to what we use for budgeting purposes. You may see in any particular year where we budget a certain amount, but it may already be over. It's really the bottom line number that we're looking for, and so just so that absolutely answers those questions. Thank you. Have a good day.
Okay, see if you can get this thing going, get out of here in good season. If you want to address any particular article, if you have information on that article and you wanted to share it, we would like to have you make your way to the mic over here. I understand that the local TV people are recording this, and so if you want your voice over the air, make your way to the mic. Okay? So, let's move right on to Article 3. You see the town will vote to raise and appropriate $826,720 for the salaries and operations of general government, $645,617 for administration, $135,917 for insurance, $15,000 for general assistance, $10,186 for elections, and $20,000 for legal fees. The Town Council and the Budget Committee both recommend $826,720. What is your pleasure on Article 3?
Move the article as printed.
Is there a second to that? Motion has been made and seconded to accept the article as printed. Any discussion? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Shelley Rodney, North Road. I just had some questions concerning revenue that's coming into the town that isn't necessarily showing up on any of these articles, and I'm hoping that the town manager or someone can answer these questions, which will help appropriate all the money that we're looking to appropriate. The first question was, addition to the $36,000 in additional franchise fees from 2017 and an additional $56,000 from 2018's franchise fees. I'm just curious as to what we're doing with that money, and if somebody can explain where it is before we start appropriating more money, we should know where these funds are going to, considering that if the PERC, which the town manager had just mentioned, that if you go apples to apples from last year's budget, the budget then is really knocked down because all the other articles have actually increased. So, if those questions could be answered, I'd appreciate it.
Does the council of the town manager understand her question?
I think I do.
You think you do? Okay, you want to make a stab at it?
I can make a stab at it.
Okay.
So, when we discuss Article 30, revenues, in the spreadsheet, it shows where the school paid $165,941.40. So revenues are in the revenues. So that was used to offset this current year's budget, the 17-18 budget. And then the cable TV piece, that came in a couple of years ago. That's currently in a capital reserve fund within our general ledger. And that you're not going to find in the spreadsheets, but is definitely in our audit, as well as the additional pieces for last year's franchise fees. And this year, the franchise fees weren't in yet when this was printed. But that's currently sitting in a revenue account as well.
So my question is, those are sitting in revenue accounts and are not being used. It's my understanding, like with other towns, they're using their franchise fees to offset some on the taxes, which I have a problem because I do pay franchise fees on my cable bill for that money to be used, because that to me looks like a double tax for anybody that has cable bills.
Right.
So I'm just curious as to how we're going to handle that in the future, because that money is coming up higher based on the work that our station manager had done to get us to this point.
So those funds are in designated revenue accounts for PEG TV purposes and have nothing to do with this Article number 3.
Right, what I'm looking at is revenue. It's all money that we get coming in, so that's why I was asking these questions, is because it's all money before we do this. Last year, there was a gentleman that spoke very eloquently about the fact that every time we approve a budget, approve an article here, we're spending our tax dollars. And he spoke very eloquently, but it was towards the end before people actually stopped to think about that, to say what we're spending. I understand that, so that's where I was. And I do realize the $170,000 or $165,000 from the school budget, from the school that came back, was used instead of the capital, instead of the undesignated fund. There was money that was going to be taken out of it from last year's. When we stood here last year, we talked about the up to $250,000 that was going to be taken out of that account, and used. And rather than using that, the $170,000 was used, or $165,000 was used instead of. So we voted to reduce our taxes, and it didn't do that. What it did apparently is keep them the same, because I don't know about anybody else, but I haven't seen a reduction in my taxes in 20 years. Thank you.
All set? Any other question or comment under Article 3? Consent you're ready to vote. All in favor of accepting Article 3 in the amount of $826,720, please signify with your right hand. Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 4, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $194,202 for municipal debt. Both the town council and the budget committee recommend the same amount. What is your pleasure under Article 4?
I move Article 4 as printed.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept Article 4 as printed. Any question? Any comment? Any discussion? All those in favor of accepting Article 4 in the amount of $194,202, please signify. Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 5. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $202,020 for the salaries and operations of the Lawrence Public Library. question? Any comment? That's ready to vote. All in favor of accepting Article 5 in the amount of $202,020, please signify. Those opposed? The motion carries. Article 6. To see the town vote to raise and appropriate $26,308 for the operations and maintenance of the Faifield Community Center. Both the town council and the budget recommend the same amount. What is your pleasure under Article 6?
I move the article as printed.
Is there a second? Motion has been made and seconded to accept Article 6 as printed. Any discussion? All in favor of accepting Article 26 in the amount of Article 6 in the amount of $202,020, please signify. Those opposed?
It was the 26,000.
I'm sorry, it's 26,000.
$26,308.
Where am I?
Article 6.
Article 6, just for clarification,
Oh, yeah.
$26,308.
I told you I was from Madison. Let's do that again. We've got a motion, we've got a second, and discussion. All in favor of accepting Article 6 for $26,308, please signify. Those opposed? Motion carried. You would have went ahead and voted for it even though I had the wrong number.
It's not as printed.
Article 7. To see the town will vote to raise and appropriate $1,039,189 for the salaries and operations of the police department. Both the town council and the budget committee recommend the same amount. What is your pleasure?
So moved, Mr. President.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept Article 7 as printed. Any discussion? Any comment? All in favor of accepting Article 7 in the amount of $1,039,189, please signify. Those opposed? The motion carries. Article 8. To see the town will vote to raise and appropriate $853,333 for the salaries and operations of the fire department. Both the town council and the budget committee recommend the same amount. What is your pleasure under Article 8? Motion has been made and seconded to accept Article 8 as printed. Any discussion? Any question? Any comment? All in favor of accepting Article 8 as printed in the amount of $853,333, please signify. Those opposed? The motion carries. Article 9. See the town will vote to raise and appropriate $215,138 for the cost of operations and maintenance of fire hydrants and street lighting. Street lights are $77,000, fire hydrants $138,148. Both the town council and the budget committee recommend the same amount. What is your pleasure?
Move the article as printed.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept Article 9 as printed. Any question? Any comment? All in favor of accepting Article 9 in the amount of $215,138, please signify. Those opposed? The motion carries. Article 10. See the town will vote to raise and appropriate $1,173,010 for the salaries and operations of public works and cemeteries and park departments. $1,083,077 for public works, $89,933 for cemeteries and parks. Town council and budget committee recommend the same amount. What is your pleasure?
Move the article as written.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept Article 10 as printed. Any question? All in favor of accepting Article 10 in the amount of $1,173,110, please signify. Those opposed? Motion carries. Article 11, to see the town will vote to raise and appropriate $260,000 for road, street, sidewalk paving, and to carry forward any unexpended account balance into the next fiscal year. Both town council and budget committee recommend the same amount. What is your pleasure on Article 11?
The article is written.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept Article 11 as printed. Any question? All in favor of accepting Article 11 in the amount of $260,000, please signify. Those opposed? town will vote to raise and appropriate $32,850 for solid waste disposal and recycling. Both the town council and the budget committee recommend the same. What is your pleasure under Article 12?
Move the article as written.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept Article 12 as printed. Any question? Any comment? All in favor of accepting Article 12 in the amount of $32,850, please signify. Those opposed? Motion carries. Article 13, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $20,000 for spring cleanup. Town council and budget committee recommend the same amount. What is your pleasure under Article 13?
Move the article as written.
Motion has been made. Is there a second? Motion has been made and seconded to accept Article 13 as printed. Any discussion? Any comment? All in favor of accepting Article 13 in the amount of $20,000, please signify. Those opposed? Motion carries. Article 14. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $170,000 for capital improvement, equipment, and other reserve accounts. $115,000 for capital equipment reserve, $30,000 for capital improvement reserve, $5,000 for computer reserve, $5,000 for playground reserve, and $20,000 for reevaluation reserve. Both the town council and the budget committee recommend the same amount. What is your pleasure under Article 14?
Move the article as written.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept Article 14 as printed. Any discussion? Yes, sir.
Just kind of curious how the $115,000 relates to the Article 38 or that couple $100,000 that's not last article.
So if you look at the spreadsheet, the sheet for that last article, page 92. And if you look to the far right, you would see where the totals would be for the 2018-19 requested is at $115,000. And then the 2018-19 fire capital reserve request, which is actually within the fire department's budget, so that's $60,000. So the total for the year would be $170,000. And then it goes on to show the additional revenue we're requesting for the 250-315. So if you look down below that, you'll see how that's divvied up. It shows the 2017-18 amounts for fire, police, and public works. And then you'll see the 2018-2019, how that also is divvied up with fire, police, and public works. So out of that 175, $35,000 of it goes to police, $80,000 of it goes to public works, $60,000 is in fire.
Any other question or comment on Article 14?
I want to clarify that a little bit. The $35,000 for police and the $80,000 for public works is the $115,000. This article's total also happens to be $175,000, but that includes the other pieces, the capital improvement reserve for buildings, the computer reserve, the playground reserve, and the reevaluation reserve. So this last sheet only divvies up that $115,000.
So the total for capital or equipment reserves will be the $175,000 plus the $250,000 from Article 38?
So if everything passes this evening, based upon when this was printed, so with our current equipment balances, this $115,000 plus Article 38, we would have a total of $593,638.55 in capital reserves. We've had to use some of that capital reserve funding at this time, but it'd be roughly about there.
$500,000.
Yes. And just for perspective, we need to put aside about $750,000 a year in order to fund all three of our departments for equipment reserves. So, and that's annually. So the fact that we don't even have enough here to cover what our needs are annually is why we're trying to catch up and why we're trying to use this revenue, this unexpected revenue to help offset some of that cost.
So So we use that account to buy police cars and buy trucks and
Plow trucks
things,
and
rather than
loaders.
doing it in front of the town.
Yeah.
Any other question under Article 14? Thank you for that clarification. All in favor of accepting Article 14 in the amount of $175,000, please signify. Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 15, to see if the town will vote to appropriate up to $17,000 for contingency from the contingency reserve. Both the town council and the budget committee recommend the $17,000. What is your pleasure under Article 15?
The article is printed.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept Article 15 as printed. Any discussion? Yes, ma'am.
Could you explain contingency versus the contingency reserve? I mean, it just sounds like we already have a contingency fund. What's this for?
So years ago, there's a general ledger account that's been set up that's called contingency. I don't know how the money got in there, but it's there. So what happens is that we use that to fund our contingency. So contingency in the annual budget does not come from taxation. It comes from that specific designated account. In order for it to be spent in any given year, it needs to be approved by town meeting. So it's not an account that because the money wasn't put there for any specific purpose, it's labeled as contingency. We ask to use that to offset going forward.
That's the difference from the $3 million that's sitting there, or almost $3 million?
What $3 million?
There's $3 million in the reserves that was listed in the budget. There's a $3 million reserve account, undesignated fund balance, I guess. So what's the difference between the undesignated fund balance, where there's almost $3 million in it, and having to do a contingency?
So the undesignated fund balance is money that's sitting there that's not designated for anything, as it states, and it needs to be given permission for it to be used. So undesignated fund balance is created, say we predict that we're going to bring in $500,000 in excise tax, but we brought in $550,000 in excise tax. We already anticipated the $500,000, so that was used to offset property taxes. The $50,000 goes towards the undesignated fund. Or say we budgeted, like we just did for not paving, that's a bad example. We budgeted $20,000 for spring cleanup, but we only used $16,000. The remainder of that goes into the undesignated. So then you use that fund, when they use money from the undesignated fund to offset property taxes, that's where those monies come from.
Any other question under Article 15? All in favor of accepting Article 15 as printed in the amount of $17,000, please signify. Those opposed? Motion carries. Article 16, to see the town will vote to raise and appropriate $7,000 for community events. Both the town council and the budget committee recommend the same amount. What is your pleasure under Article 16?
The article is printed.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept Article 16 as printed. Any discussion? See, ready to vote. All in favor of accepting Article 16 in the amount of $7,000, please signify. Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 17. See the town will vote to raise and appropriate $1,500 to honor soldiers and sailors with roadside flags on Memorial Day. Both the town council and the budget committee recommend the same amount. What is your pleasure under Article 17?
The article is printed.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept Article 17 as printed. Any discussion? Yes, sir.
So, I guess I'm curious more than anything. So this is $1,500. What do we have to do to take it out of the $3 million that Shelley just talked about, the undesignated money that keeps getting added to every year? How would we, is there a possibility for that? How does that work?
The article would have to be written that way for it to come from the undesignated fund
So
balance.
there's no sense of any about being here if we wanted to do that. We would have to get into this
So that's why we have that article that will be coming out for council to use up to $250,000 from the undesignated fund balance to offset property taxes.
So that's where we would do that?
So that's where that comes into play. So that's the article you want to vote for, so to give them the authority to be able to do that. So they'll be able to reduce the amount that comes from taxation by drawing off that undesignated fund balance. That's why that article is there.
Any other question or comment? Yes, sir.
So with regard to undesignated fund balance, I was going to talk about this later when we talk about appropriating from the undesignated fund to offset taxation. But the undesignated fund balance actually does serve a purpose other than being a holding account for $3 million. We have to, as a matter of fiscal health for the municipality, have a certain amount of undesignated fund relative to our operating costs. Where our undesignated fund is right now, we are sort of at the cusp of a healthy and unhealthy fiscal picture, and we are just on the healthy side of it. If we start using that as a piggy bank, like other municipalities in the area, and I'll say particularly since you've heard about it in the news, Waterville has done in the past, then we will get into a situation where we are no longer fiscally healthy, and you'll see what they've seen, multi-year double-digit tax increases, being unable to bond at reasonable interest rates when things come up. So when we talk about, we have this $3 million, that is $3 million that is being banked against a future fiscal disaster if something were to happen. And we will not be able to maintain the fiscal health of the municipality if we dip into it now. And we will end up having to borrow and tax higher in the future. And with the interest rates going up and the likelihood of bonding becoming more expensive, we really don't want to get into a situation where we spent our savings today and then have to borrow it all back in 5 to 10 years.
Any other question or comment? Yes, ma'am.
Donalise Clifford from North York Road. If you're going to discuss the undesignated fund balance right now, the question, it looks like it's already below the 3-month operating amount that we are supposed to have in there, and we're taking another $250,000 out. Is that correct?
We're actually putting $250,000 in, according to the budget. We really want to keep it at the 3-month operating level. My understanding is our most recent audit said that we are basically healthy, but we can't really go below where we are without becoming unhealthy again.
So we have, when we get to Article 32, especially in the spreadsheets, you'll see, as of June 30th, 2017, our audited undesignated fund balance is $2,978,535. What we need, the required 3 months of operation total would be $3,051,228. So yes, our undesignated fund balance is currently below what we need to guarantee 3 months of operation should there be a future disaster or any disaster.
What I read in the article that's coming up is that we're going to take more money out of the offset tax.
So we have the possibility of being able to do that. And this article doesn't guarantee that that's what will happen. It just gives the council the ability, and by using that ability, what it's been done, one, it caps it so that you can't come in and take all of it. But what it does is it allows us, so if we see there's a large change in the mill rate, we can help soften that. So what you're voting on tonight is the municipal budget, but what also affects your property taxes is the county budget and the school budget. So if those increases come in and it looks like the mill rate's going to be too large, the council oftentimes will try to use the undesignated fund balance to soften that. Fortunately, this year, the way things currently look, with the municipal decrease of $111,000, the county's increase of only about $1,600, and the school's increase of about $65,000, there's enough in there that it's going to cover that. So the chances are that we're not going to need to use the undesignated fund balance in order to keep the mill rate from skyrocketing. The process is, what we try to do is to make sure it stays as an even keel. Nobody wants to see a 2 mil increase. Nobody wants to see 5 mil decrease. We'd all love it, but not to know that it's going to jump 7 mils the following year because we used all our money. So what we try to do is maintain it at a healthy level, keep our fund balance at a healthy level, make sure we still continue to provide services, and be able to keep your tax rate in check. We'd love to all have 12% mill rates, but it's just not plausible. You're welcome.
Any other question or comment under Article 17? All in favor of accepting Article 17 in the amount of $1,500, please signify. Those opposed? Motion carries. Article 18, to see the town will vote to raise and appropriate $35,582 to support the Faifield Fleet Athletic League. Both the town council and the budget committee recommend the same amount. What is your pleasure under Article 18?
Move Article 18.
Motion is made and seconded to accept Article 18 as printed. Any discussion? Any comment? All in favor of accepting Article 18 in the amount of $35,582, please signify. Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 19, to see the town will vote to raise and appropriate $500 to pay youth membership fees at the Alphon Youth Center for Fairfield children. Both town council and budget committee both recommend $500. What is your pleasure?
The article is written.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept Article 19 as printed. Any discussion? All in favor of accepting Article 19 in the amount of $500, please signify. Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 20. To see the town will vote to raise and appropriate $3,000 to support the Fairfield Historical Society. Both the town council and the budget committee recommend the same amount. What is your pleasure under Article 20?
The article is written.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept Article 20 as printed. Any question? Any comment? All those in favor of accepting Article 20 in the amount of $3,000, please signify. Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 21. To see the town will vote to raise and appropriate $2,500 to support child and family services provided by Kennebec Valley Community Action Program. Both the town council and the budget committee recommend the same amount. What is your pleasure under Article 21?
Move Article 21.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept Article 21 as printed. Any question? All in favor of accepting Article 21 in the amount of $2,500, please signify. Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 23, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $2,500 to support transportation programs provided by Kennebec Valley Community Action Program. Both the town council and the budget committee recommend the same amount. What is your pleasure under Article 22?
The article is printed.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept Article 22 as printed. Any discussion? All in favor of accepting Article 22 in the amount of $2,500, please signify. Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 23, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $8,250 to support the Fairfield Interfaith Food Pantry. Both the town council and the budget committee recommend the same amount under Article 23. What is your pleasure?
The article is printed.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept Article 23 as printed. Any question? Any comment? All in favor of accepting Article 23 in the amount of $8,250, please signify. Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 24. To see if the town will vote to raise the appropriate $1,500 to support mid-Maine homeless shelter. Both the town council and the budget committee recommend the same amount. What is your pleasure under Article 24?
The article is printed.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept Article 24 as printed. Any question? All in favor of accepting Article 24 in the amount of $1,500, please signify. Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 25, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $1,500 to support hospice of water. Both the town council and the budget committee recommend $1,500. What is your pleasure? Motion has been made and seconded to accept Article 25 as printed. Any questions? All in favor of accepting Article 25 as printed in the amount of $1,500, please signify. Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 26. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $2,750 to support Spectrum Generations. Both the town council and the budget committee recommend the same amount. What is your pleasure under Article 26?
Move the articles.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept Article 26 as printed. Any discussion? Any question? All in favor of accepting Article 26 in the amount of $4,750, please signify. Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 27, to see if the town will vote to appropriate up to $20,000 from cable franchise fees received as general revenue to support public, educational, and governmental access costs per 47 USC Section 531. Both Town Council and Budget Committee recommend $20,000. What is your pleasure under Article 27? Is there a motion? Motion has been made. Is there a second? Motion has been made and seconded to accept Article 27 as printed. Is there any discussion? Is there any question?
Yes, sir. Shelley Roby, North Walk Road. So, under the cable franchise fees, the town council at some meeting prior to this, without benefit of being on the agenda, has decided to take the running of the cable operations away from Central Maine CATV, and the town council, or the town, is now going to run this TV station as of July 1st. And my question is, again, $78,000 came from our franchise fees. What is the town plan for the cable channel now that they've decided to take it over? I will state that our station manager for the last 15 years has gone out and worked on a shoestring budget and busted her butt to bring in sponsorships and donations for the cable station, and using less than $20,000 in a lot of years to support that. So my question is, now that you've decided as the town council, without benefit of it being on an agenda, to take that away from Central Maine CATV, the board of directors, and deal with it yourself, could the town council explain what the plan is? I know that ever since you hired the town manager, she has been working with some technology group and been trying to take over, and the plan has been for them to take over the station. I guess my question is, and for the folks, do we want to keep appropriating money to something that the town that over 15 years ago gave to have it being managed so that the town wouldn't have to deal with it, and now they're taking it back again. So I would like that explained, please.
Yes, sir.
So I'm willing to address this issue. What was conveniently left out of that statement was that CATV signed a merger with an entity based in Mount Blue called CMMA, and they presented us with a contract asking for a $78,000 a year contribution from the town of Fairfield to run a service we had previously been running on a $20,000 a year allocation. Now, it is my understanding that they have since dissolved that merger, but at the time that the council took the action of indicating that we no longer wanted to do business with CMMA, to whom that letter was addressed, we had never been informed that the CATV board had chosen to merge with that entity. In fact, you'll see in your town report a letter from the CATV station that simply does not mention that they had been for over a year in talks to move their base of operation essentially out of Fairfield into Mount Blue. That is why we took the action we did. CATV has always been welcome to participate in the technology committee. We've had both open and executive session meetings with the station manager to discuss her participation in that. And to this date, she is still welcome to attend the technology committee meeting and discuss how CATV can be involved in this process.
She was informed by the town manager she was not welcome to attend those meetings any longer. However, let me explain a little bit on how we've been discussing a fact to merge to try to save services. Because unlike the town who takes our tax dollars, that $78,000 is from franchise fees. It's from my franchise fees that you use for my cable bill that's supposed to be used to support a cable station. That's what they're for. They're not supposed to be used for those other things. However, giving TV station, because we have been working, and Laura has been working on a shoestring budget. $20,000 doesn't even pay her salary. Tell me anybody can live on the $20,000 that the town gives to cover the administrative cost of the station. That's why we were trying to merge services and local services. But it didn't work out. We've dissolved with them, but we will continue probably on an internet-only basis because the town's decided they want to, again, without talking and asking any question or even putting it on an agenda that you were going to do that, giving CATV a chance to do that. That's why I'm asking what we're going to do. Are we going to just, give this $20,000 to who at this point?
Yes, ma'am.
I posted the agenda on April the 6th. It's an executive session. We're not under executive session guidelines. We don't list the details of what that executive section topic is going to be, but it was posted on April the 6th for the 4/11 meeting. So that agenda was posted.
But executive session, in my understanding, is only supposed to be used for personnel matters and contract negotiations.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Executive sessions are used for contract negotiations, and CMMA presented us with a contract that we had to consider. Now, I don't know why you don't know what CMMA was presenting us with, since you are the president of CATV, but they presented us with a contract. We had to consider that contract, and in light of not wanting to damage either our or their negotiating position with the member municipalities at the time you were also negotiating with, we chose to do that privately so that both parties would not be harmed by the negotiation.
So you've already been negotiating with other municipalities prior to this, is that what you just said?
No, you have.
No, CATV has not.
I can pull up the emails if you'd like. I got them a Freedom of Access Act request from Waterville.
Let me just bring us back to focus here. I understand your concern, but I don't think you're going to get the clear answer, not necessarily that there is one, but I do understand that executive session is executive session, and subject matter discussed in executive session stays within the body of there. So the question tonight is, on Article 27, to raise to appropriate $20,000 from that capital reserve account, capital franchise, cable franchise, yeah.
There's one thing that I'd like to clarify as well. I was under the understanding that it was not CATV that dissolved what they say was going to be the merger. From what I understand, it was the other entity that dissolved and didn't want to do that with CATV.
Your understanding is wrong, and that's why we have separated from them completely, is because they were missing the point of things that were different. So that's your understanding is wrong.
Yes, sir. One more comment. I heard a motion to move the question, but his hand was up. We'll honor that, and then we'll take action on Article 27.
Another question, President of Faifield. I just have a question. Obviously, I'm going to vote for this article, which is $20,000. Is it still an open question whether CATV, that group, can come before you and see if something can be worked out? That's just
yes, sir.
As a counselor, any organization that can come before us with a viable and affordable plan to operate the station is welcome to do that. I would never preclude CATV from coming to us or coming to our tech committee to discuss their continued operation of that station. We just ended up in a situation where we understood that we were being asked to pay $78,000 for something that we've traditionally budgeted $20,000 for, and frankly, we just haven't had a lot of communication since then about other viable options. So the tech committee is putting together a program, and I'm sure that CATV could be part of that if they wish to participate.
So I encourage you both sides to get together.
Thank you. The motion on the floor.
Excuse me, but I had my hand up too. Nobody saw me, but
One more, and then we're going to vote.
I just want to say, this is more to you than anybody, but I don't think it's right to say they're not going to get a clear or straight answer, because I think everyone was trying to present that, and I think it's unfortunate wording to say that in the midst of this meeting.
Okay, I apologize for making that statement. It wasn't my intent to make that. You wouldn't get a clear answer. but my intent was to bring us back to the focus on the article as it is printed. That's what we need to vote on right now. Okay, all those in favor of accepting Article 27 as printed in the amount of $20,000, please signify. If you're voting yes, you're voting in favor of it. If you're voting no, you're voting opposed to it. All in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries. Article 28, to see the town will vote to appropriate the full balance of snowmobile registration fees reimbursed to the town of Fairfield by the state of Maine to the Fairfield Country Riders Snowmobile Club for the maintenance of the network of snowmobile trails within the town of Fairfield on condition that those trails are kept open to the public for outdoor winter recreation purposes at no charge. Both the town council and the budget recommend approval of Article 28. What is your pleasure under 28? Article 28.
The article is approved.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept Article 28 as printed. Any discussion? Any questions? All in favor of accepting Article 28 as printed, please signify. Those opposed? Motion carries. Article 29. To see the town will vote to appropriate $28,655 to support local businesses and economic development organizations as listed below. $100 to Somerset Economic Development Corporation, $665 to Mid-Maine Chamber of Commerce, $8,530 to Kennebec Valley Council of Government, and $19,360 to Central Maine Growth Council. Both the town council and the budget committee recommend the same amount. What is your pleasure under Article 29?
I move the article as printed.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept Article 29 as printed. Any questions? Any clarification? Yes, ma'am.
Can you just explain what they're doing for us to bring businesses to Fairfield so that we can look at reduction in taxes? The Growth Council, the Kennebec Valley Council of Governments, I mean, if we're spending this $20,000 or $28,000, what are they doing to bring businesses to town to help us out here?
Yes, sir.
So,
And Aaron's got it.
I see that we have a representative from the Growth Council here, so if, after I'm done, if it's the pleasure of the meeting that he address this as well, I'm sure he'd love to. But I know that we were able to retire the Escalin Drive debt due to the efforts of the Growth Council to bring in a national consulting group. We were also able to arrange a TIF agreement that actually put money into our general fund, not just into blocked off TIF accounts. That always helps to reduce taxation. And we were able to do that largely through the efforts of the Growth Council. Additionally, they have brought in a dialysis clinic that's bringing people into town to shop in our stores and generally contribute to job growth in our economy. They've also found a use for the Old Town Dump as a solar project, and that's actually between that and another solar project that they've managed to bring in. Fairfield will actually produce almost as much electricity as we use. So the Growth Council actually has really done a lot. I know in the past I've sat here and been critical of them, but in the last couple of years we have actually seen a lot of investment come in through the efforts of the Growth Council, and so I think that we are really now looking at them having kind of paid for themselves. I mean, just the debt service being off the books alone is a huge benefit to the town. Additionally, it's my understanding that they are currently looking into a number of opportunities for our town, including development of the Ellis lot, the corner of Lawrence and Main Street, and other undeveloped lands that will bring in more private enterprise, and that always helps to reduce taxation.
Sorry.
Yes, ma'am. Another question?
Yeah, if they're bringing in these things, haven't we seen a reduction in taxes? If there is all these businesses, why are we continuing for it to go? I'm trying to understand how these things, and I'm not opposed to doing it if they're doing something for us. But the dialysis, I think, is a wonderful thing that's there, but it's we don't get tax base off that. And I would like to see what's the tip that
if you'll look at the debt section of the spreadsheet, you'll notice a retirement of a major municipal bond, and that is due to the Growth Council finding somebody willing to buy a municipal building that was a huge net loss to our town in terms of debt, take on the entire debt and pay us back. So not only are we reducing our budget by over 4%, but we're also contributing to our capital reserve account by over $250,000. I mean, ultimately, that when we reduce our budget, that's tax savings. Of course, there are other factors in the budget, as you know, that don't help us reduce our taxes, and you'll have your meeting about that tomorrow. But as far as this budget's concerned, we're down over 4% because we've been able to reduce the amount of debt due to the Growth Council finding a private investor to take on a municipal debt.
Any other question or comment under Article 29?
Just one quick comment. And this revenue that is being brought in, as it was pointed out much earlier in the conversation, our reserve account is still below where it needs to be. So these monies are going into that reserve account, our contingencies account. We need that money so that we can prepare for the future. If we don't have that money there, we are being fiscally irresponsible. So a lot of that money is going there. No, taxes are not drastically being reduced. I don't want to drastically reduce them this year and go up on them next year. That wouldn't be very prudent on our part. As a matter of fact, we might be looked down upon for it. But where we don't have enough money in our reserve accounts, we're trying to build that up. Do we want to go out for a bond at a very high interest rates? Do you folks want to take on a high interest bond because we were not fiscally responsible? I don't think anybody wants to do that. We don't want to do that. So until we get to that point, we need to have that reserve account up to at least 3 months of operating expenses, and we're not there yet. But we are getting there. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
My question though is, our budget is $5 million, 5 point whatever million. We have almost 3 million in there. So how is that not over 3 months? I mean, if a 3 months operating expense budget.
Because some of that.
$5 million budget, you know, I guess I'm looking at the numbers. The numbers mean a lot to me, so that's what I'm looking at.
Because some of that is designated.
No, it's because of the fact that we have to be able to pay the county and the school and our municipal expenses as well.
Yes.
The $5 million is only municipal. It doesn't include the payment to the school and the payment to the county. Okay, so in order to have those 3 months, we need to cover all 3 of those.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question or comment under Article 29? All in favor of accepting Article 29 as printed, please signify. Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 30. To see if the town will vote to accept and expend the sum of $1,546,774 from estimated revenues to reduce the amount to be raised by taxation. Both the town council and the budget committee recommend approval of Article 30. What is your pleasure? Motion has been made and seconded to accept Article 30 as printed. Any discussion? Any questions? All in favor of accepting Article 30 as printed, please signify. Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 31. Yep. Choking my way through.
It's a big article.
I get all choked up with these big numbers.
It's a big article.
Article 31. See the town will vote to accept and expend the categories of funds listed below as provided by the Maine State Legislature. Estimated revenues as follows. Revenue sharing, municipal revenue sharing, $425,000. Local road assistance program, $73,000. Homestead reimbursement, $180,000. Snowmobile registration refund, $2,000. General assistance reimbursement, $7,500. Veterans exemption reimbursement, tree growth reimbursement, other local, state, or federal funds or grants, civil emergency funds, all unknown. So, is there a motion to accept Article 31 as printed with what we know and what we don't know?
So moved.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any question? Any comment? Article 32, to see if the town will vote to authorize the town council to apply up to the sum of $250,000 from the undesignated fund balance to reduce the amount to be raised by taxation. Both the town council and the budget committee recommend approval of Article 32. What is your pleasure?
Move the article as printed.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept Article 32 as printed. Any discussion? All in favor of accepting Article 32 as printed in the amount of $250,000 from the undesignated fund balance, please signify. Those opposed, that motion carries. Article 33, to see if the town will vote to apply as much as the yearly overlay as may be necessary to fund property tax abatements and applicable interest granted during July 1, 2018 through June 30, 2019 fiscal year. Town council recommends approval of Article 33. What is your pleasure?
Seconded.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept Article 33 as printed. Any question? Any comment? All in favor of accepting Article 33 as printed, please signify. Those opposed, that motion carries. Article 34. To see the town will vote to fix a date when taxes shall be due and payable, and to fix a rate of interest to be charged on taxes remaining unpaid after said date. Town council's recommendation is that taxes shall be due and payable when billed, and that an annual interest rate of 2% per annum be charged on taxes remaining unpaid after the 3rd day of August 2018, or 30 days from the date of tax bill mail, whichever is last. For the first installment after the 2nd day of November 2018, for the second installment after the 1st day of February 2019, for the 3rd installment after the 3rd day of May 2019, and the 3rd of May 2019 for the 4th installment.
Excuse me.
It was 8%, not 2%.
Mr. Monitor.
You read 2, it's 8%.
Yes, correction, it's 8%, not 2%.
You said 2 and it's 8 there.
8%.
Did I say 2%?
Yes.
Trying to save you, right you can't get by these guys.
No, you can't.
You're going to charge them 8%.
8%.
Everyone understand you're going to charge 8%, not what I said. You see the way I told you how much printing?
Like what you said.
Okay, everybody understand what 34 does? Any question? Thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome.
All in favor of accepting Article 34 as printed, not read, please signify.
You need a motion.
Those opposed, that motion carries. Article 35, to see if the town will vote to fix the interest rate to be paid to taxpayers for amounts paid in excess of that final assessment pursuant to Title 36 MRSA 506A. Town council's recommendation is an annual interest rate of 4% to be established and applied to said overpayment. What is your pleasure under Article 35?
Move the article as printed.
Moved and seconded to accept Article 35 as printed. Any discussion? Yes, ma'am.
I just have a question. I'm sorry I can't walk to the mic, but I'm Lynn Robb, I live in Fairfield. Is that to a certain limit? Because that's a lot better than the savings account, and could we just put money in there and get interest?
It'd be great if it worked that way. This is actually, both of these articles, Article 34 and 35 go together, and they're set by state statute. So the state treasurer sets what the maximum interest rate is that can be set for property tax collection. And then there's another article, the state statute goes along with that says we can't reduce that by any more than 4%. This is what, this article is if you paid your property taxes and then you found out that there was a large mistake. You had processed and asked for an abatement, something needed to be corrected. We would pay you back your money plus 4% interest. That's what this piece is for.
But you can't just add extra on purpose.
This is the town paying the interest, so no. No, we don't pay any extra at all.
No. So the next article authorizes the acceptance of prepayment. So if you overpay your taxes, it's just prepayment to your next bit of tax.
Your next billing tax.
You cannot, in fact, make money by prepaying your taxes.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way.
What I gathered out of this, you can't take your money out of your bank and put it in the bank.
No.
Article 35, any other question or comment under Article 35? All in favor of accepting Article 35 as printed, please signify. Those opposed, that motion carries.
Mr. Moderator?
Article 36,
Mr. Curtis?
to see the town vote to authorize the tax collector.
Before we get too much further, believe it or not, we clarified the interest rate on Article 34, but I don't believe we actually had a motion and a second to adopt that article before we moved to the vote. And since it is property taxes, can we ensure that we actually get that on the article?
We want to make sure.
I would move the adoption of Article 34 as printed. Second.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Second. Well,
You already voted, but.
hang on, in order to go back and reconsider an article that has already been voted on, did we vote on it?
We did vote on it, but I don't believe anybody gave you a motion and a second before you moved to the vote. That's why.
We're too far along to get confusing now.
Yes.
The motion is to accept Article 34 as printed. Is there a second to that? Second. Do we know what we're doing?
Yes.
Yes.
Go back and voting on what I didn't make clear to you the first time. All in favor of accepting Article 34 as printed, please signify. Those opposed, the motion carries. What messed you up? Was that 2%?
That's what it was. That's what it was.
Sorry.
And you were good with 35, so.
All right. 35, we're all set. We're ready for 36, to see if the town will vote to authorize the tax collector to accept prepayment of taxes not yet committed and to pay no interest on said prepayment. Town council approves Article 36 as printed. What is your pleasure?
Move the article as printed.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept Article 36 as printed. Any question? Any comment? All in favor of accepting Article 36 as printed, please signify. Those opposed, motion carries. Article 37, to see if the town will vote to authorize the town council on behalf of the town to sell and dispose of any real estate acquired by the town for non-payment of taxes or by any other means, and to execute quitclaim deeds for such property sold. Town council recommends approval of Article 37. What is your pleasure?
Move the article as printed.
Motion has been moved and seconded to accept Article 37 as printed. Any questions? Any comment? All in favor of accepting Article 37 as printed, please signify. All opposed? That motion carries. Article 38. To see the town will vote to allocate proceeds from 50 Erskine Drive mortgage payoff in the amount of $253,151 to the capital equipment reserve account to help fund future equipment costs for the town departments. Town council and budget committee recommend approval of Article 38. What is your pleasure? Motion has been made and seconded to accept Article 38 as printed. Any question? Any comment? Yes, sir.
I just need a little more clarification. Earlier, we talked about all this money, $250,000 plus about 100 and some thousand that we quoted on earlier. And did the town manager say that we spend $750,000 a year on equipment for the town?
No.
No?
We need to do it.
What I said is that we needed to put aside $750,000 a year for the town, but that's not what we do. If we were to take every vehicle, so you take a plow truck and you take a plow truck's current value and you divide it by 10 because they're only going to last about 10 years. You have to put that aside for each truck. So if you spend $400,000 on a plow truck, every year you need to put $40,000 aside, $100,000. So when you start thinking about it that way, and then if you look at fire trucks, which can run anywhere between $250,000 to $800,000, and you take the longevity life of the fire truck and you divide that cost by that number of years, and you should put that money aside. Same thing with police cruisers. You take the amount of a police cruiser, its 4-year shelf life, divide that by 4, so you do, and so on. So then by taking all of those various different departments and you think about all the various pieces of equipment we have and you put it all together, it's roughly between $500,000 and $750,000 a year that needs to be put aside for our capital interests. And then everything is purchased on a rotating basis. So you bought a truck today, next year, you got to start putting money aside to replace that truck again 10 more years down the road.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
How many
Hang on, you want me to finish? With yours?
I'm going to think for a minute.
Yes, sir.
How many miles do they put on this town plow truck a year?
Great question. I don't know. It's a great question.
I'm going to say around 15 to 20,000 a year.
15.
Them town trucks don't go more than 10 years on them motors. They're a diesel motor.
It's typically not the motors. It's usually the frames and the bodies. It's the rust. It's not typically the motors that go. It's the truck itself.
Yes, sir.
And I do want to point out that after a recent capital reserve or capital expenditure that we were basically required to make out of an emergency involving some fire trucks, we as a council have been very, very hawkish on the issue of maintenance, and I think we intend to continue that. We've actually been making sure that the town manager has followed up with department heads about using the best practices for maintenance going forward, because we cannot afford under any circumstance to have our equipment fall apart due to poor maintenance. And so we've had a very eye-opening experience about what was going on with that, and it is being addressed so that our trucks will last longer without rusting out.
Any other question or comment under Article 38? Yes, sir.
So, as we all know, we had two fire trucks in my dad. We purchased one, and we just spoke. Are we buying another one this year?
We've applied for a grant through Maine, the Federal Fire Association there, to replace that truck.
And if we don't get the grant?
Then we haven't decided what we're going to do yet.
So with the $750,000 in this account, whatever it works out to be, if we don't get the grant and when people decide that we need to buy it anyway, you don't have to bring it in front of the town to drop another, what, $300,000, $400,000?
So the reason we replaced one of the trucks is that it actually happened to be two of our pumpers. We have two pumpers and both of them were down. The pumper is the third truck that leaves the station on a call, and it's also needed to be replaced in order to continue with our insurance rating, so our ISO rating, so that folks in town have better insurance rates, which is the reason why that was done. We did apply the grant, even if it was approved, wasn't going to come through until sometime next year. So it's not anything that we've had a discussion about at this time. This third truck, replacing that pumper that we did buy, we got a demo. In fact, I even had a fit because the seat was dirty. So we shopped, we did the best value that we could get, the least possible rate that we could find. We worked with our bank, they gave us a really good interest rate, and we were able so that we're not actually making a payment on that truck until next fiscal year. But it is not anybody's intent at this time to recommend that we would bond another truck to continue that payment. The payment itself will fit within the current $60,000 appropriation for the fire department, leaving some money left over for their capital reserve balance. So it will have zero impact on property taxes. It's funds that we already appropriate.
So we replaced one fire truck?
Yes.
Which leaves us down still a fire truck?
Correct.
And your plan is not this year to go out and buy that second truck?
Correct.
Unless we get something?
Unless something happens. But as of right now, there's been no discussion about taking out a bond to replace that second truck.
And if you change your mind during one of the executive sessions, shall we say, and decided to buy a second truck, then you can just do that without coming to the town?
So it wouldn't be done in an executive session. Decisions are never made in an executive session. They're always made in the open. And the council would have a meeting on that and a discussion, and it would be done at a public meeting.
So it wouldn't be like brought up
It depends on how the funding would have to be. So this truck itself, like I said, was within the already capital reserve appropriation for the year. So, yeah.
Second one, you know, if you guys, if we're just giving you this money, you can go out and write a check anytime you want without, you know, making it painfully aware to the citizens, I think, may be legal, but it seems kind of vague to me.
Yes, sir.
So I want to address that concern as well. Just put very simply, the council cannot spend money unless the town meeting authorizes it. So even if we got the best deal possible on earth on a fire truck, but it was not within the spending authority that you had already voted on, we would have to bring it back to you. And I would personally insist on that because I believe very strongly that this meeting is your opportunity to tell us what to do. And if we just went around that, there'd be no point to the whole thing.
But are we giving you that permission by putting $750,000?
No, we're just saving that money so that in the future, when you do authorize us to spend, it will be there, we won't have to borrow it. But you would still have to give us the authority somewhere in this budget to spend that money.
So last year, bought a new snowplow or something, a dump truck. Did that money come out of this account?
That money came out of the
Yes, it came out of the capital reserve account.
the capital reserve account that was that would be equivalent to this year's appropriation under Article 14, so for budgeted expenditures that we would expect to spend on capital improvements. This just puts the money in an account so that it's there, we don't use it for anything else, it's designated, but we still have to come to you for the authority to actually spend it at some point.
So if you, that sheet on page 92, the left-hand box where it says capital equipment reserve balance as of 6/17, 2017, there's a balance of $190,614.46. You see where it adds in the fire capital piece from the 17-18 budget of $60,000, the 17-18 budget appropriation of $115,000, and then spent as of 2/28/18, $200,126.91. Part of that is the plow truck and another small piece of equipment. So that's where that is.
Any other question or comment under Article 38? Yes, sir.
So, if I understand this all correctly, we could, we'll make it for simple numbers, but we're giving it $250,000 or so to put into this account, correct? So, we could give you $900 million to put into this account.
No.
That doesn't mean you can spend it.
No.
Some other place, we've already given you the authority to spend up to a certain amount. If
All-
you want to exceed that, then you have to come back down again.
All this article is doing is saying that the $253,151, instead of just going into the undesignated fund balance, will go into the capital reserve equipment account. It's money we already have. It doesn't affect property taxes at all.
Any other question on Article 38? Yes, sir.
But you can't spend that money unless you come to us.
As long as it's spent for these purposes.
What do you mean by that?
When you appropriate money for capital reserve, it has to fit within the capital reserve piece. So we appropriated money for plow trucks. We can spend money from capital reserves to buy plow trucks.
Right.
So
So we haven't appropriated any money for another fire truck.
no.
Anyway,
But except for the fact that if this goes through at the end of it, there'd be $195,945 in the fire department capital reserve account to spend on capital reserve equipment.
so you can spend that money
Yes.
when you want.
I can assure you I cannot buy a fire truck for $195,000, but yes, that could be done with it. So that's why the payment for this truck that we just bought will come out of this $195,945 for the next 7 years.
We all set? Everybody happy with Article 38? No more questions, no more comments, no more discussion? All in favor of Article 38 as printed, please signify. Those opposed, motion carries. Now, before I ask for an article agenda, have we got any more corrections or mess ups that we need to fix? Or I think we're good. All right. Having completed the work before us tonight, I would entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.